Diabetes is nothing new. After all, we've been living with it for the past 2,000 years. Advancements in medical knowledge and technologies has deepened the level of understanding that we have about what it's like to live with diabetes.
But is this knowledge reserved only for doctors? How much do we know about what's going on in our bodies when we have diabetes? And how does a healthy diet and regular exercise impact our bodies on a cellular level? Today, we dig deep and reveal the devil in the details.
Smells great.
Breakfast! My favorite meal of the day.
Sure.
What?
Toast.
Yes, toast. I love toast.
Sure. You know, they're high in carbohydrates.
Yeah, well, I need carbohydrates. Where else am I going to get my energy from?
I'm sure you know that when carbohydrates get digested in your body, they break down into sugar. Aren't you concerned about that?
Carbohydrates are big molecules made up of glucose. So let's compare a carbohydrate with sucrose. Sucrose also has one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. Everything that you eat as a carbohydrate finally gets broken down as glucose. And glucose is the major fuel for our body.
I love bacon.
Are you sure you're going to eat that? Are you sure it's good for you?
I don't know why bacon gets such a bad rap. It's not like it's a carb or anything.
Of course, you're right. It's just high in fat. That's about it.
Fats are very important in our body. It's all about what type of fat you consume and how much is the key point. And the reason why people are concerned about the choice of fat when you're pre-diabetic or diabetic is because pre-diabetics and diabetics have a slightly increased risk of getting a heart attack. That's why you're advised not to eat much more saturated fat if you're a pre-diabetic person.
Oh, honey, you know how much I love my eggs, right?
Oh, yes.
Soft-boiled, hard-boiled, scrambled, in a sandwich, fried. I love it all.
Eggs are great for you. They're high in protein and cholesterol.
Oh, come on. Are eggs really that bad for you? Is there anything on this plate that I can eat?
Is protein good for diabetics? Absolutely. Protein plays a major role in glucose control of the body, which is exactly what we want. And it turns out that in many, many studies that have been founded by researchers around the world, eating a higher protein diet with lower amount of carbohydrate gives you better glucose control in diabetics than not eating protein.
Obesity is a huge risk factor of diabetes, and obesity rates in Singapore are on the rise. A closer look at our eating habits will shed some light on our expanding waistlines. In 1998, the National Nutrition Survey conducted by the Health Promotion Board found out that Singaporeans consumed an average of 2,062 calories a day. And in their latest study, this number has gone up to 2,624.
Just to put things into perspective for you, the recommended average daily calorie intake for men is 2,200 calories and 1,800 calories for women. Now, of course, it's just a guideline because the average daily intake will depend on various factors from person to person, such as gender, age, the active lifestyle that you have, etc. But one thing is explicitly clear. Singaporeans, we are eating more than ever before.
My Healthy Plate is a visual guide to teach us how to eat healthier without the need to count calories or refer to nutrition information of nutrition panel or food and drinks. My Healthy Plate can also serve as a visual guide to teach us how to proportion the food in the correct amount and the type of food to eat. So a quarter of a plate should be filled with whole grains, the other quarter of a plate should be filled with lean meat and others, and the remaining half of a plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables. There is no fixed size to a plate, as the plate size will vary from the plate that you use at home or from the plate that is served at the hawker centre. But using My Healthy Plate, it should teach you the proportion of food that you should eat.
Ah, okay, that helps. But how big should my serving actually be?
So Health Promotion Board has a recommended number of servings, which tells you how much food you should eat from the different food groups in a day. Supporting this number of servings per day, there is also a recommended serving size, which tells you the standard amount of a food from the different food groups. So according to the recommended number of serving, one serving of cooked brown rice is approximately half a bowl of brown rice, which is about 100 grams. For an average individual, you should eat about 2 to 3 servings of lean meat and other protein sources such as eggs, seafood, tofu. So one serving of lean meat is about 1 palm size of meat. One serving of vegetables is approximately a quarter of a plate. For fruit, we'll always use fist size as a guide. It could be a medium apple, a medium orange, or 10 grapes. Serving sizes are important so that we can have an estimate on whether we are overeating or are we eating sufficient in a day.
It's time to get serious about serving sizes. Most of us overestimate the correct amount of food to consume. So I want to find out, what does one serving of brown rice look like to a Singaporean? Be honest, okay? Honesty is always the best policy. Okay, so around this for each meal, when you're having rice. All right, so you have put down there 82 grams. Okay, so according to this, you're eating around 125 grams. 72 grams.
Yep.
Okay, so we're looking here at roughly 136 grams. So now, were you being honest here? Right, 148 grams, your serving of rice. That's about how much rice you would eat for one serving?
Yes.
Is that normal for you, like lunch, if you're going to have rice around there? Yeah? Very hungry.
Very hungry.
118 grams, pretty much on the money, because you're meant to be having about that. So you're very, very close. 100 grams. So you are 50 grams more.
No, I think it depends on individual, like the activities they do and the lifestyle they lead.
Is this what you really eat as one serving?
That's not enough.
You feel like it's not enough, huh? Even if you load up on the veg and all that stuff, it's not going to keep you full, is it?
Yeah.
This is an honest fact, what I would usually have with my meal if I'm having rice, which is about twice that, 200, 210 grams. So really, why is it 100 grams? Because I feel that is nowhere near enough.
So staples are things like your brown rice, wholemeal bread, noodles. An average person should be eating about 5 to 7 servings a day. But if we are sedentary or we are not very active, we should be eating at the lower end, which is about 5 servings a day.
Coming up, what are the numbers that every person with diabetes should be well acquainted with? What are the consequences of leaving diabetes untreated?
We know that diabetes is called a silent killer for that reason. So they probably had diabetes for a long time without knowing it.
Earlier on, we learned that people with diabetes not only need to be wary of their sugar intake, but they also need to watch over their consumption of carbohydrates, fats, and protein. And that's not all.
Honey, do you know when our anniversary is? 27 July.
Okay. And do you know when my birthday is?
Well, of course, that would be 26 February.
Okay. And do you know how many steps I walked today?
You've walked 15,781 steps. Wow! Good job for doing more physical activities, dear. The doctor said walking will really help with your diabetes.
Okay. And do you know what my HbA1c level is?
Your what?
There are a few crucial numbers that people with diabetes need to track regularly. It's time for a very important course, ABCs of Diabetes.
HbA1c is a test that actually averages out your blood glucose or sugar readings for the past 2 to 3 months. So HbA1c gives us that added advantage, like a snapshot of what the control is like over the last 2-3 months.
HbA1c is measured through a blood test in the lab.
It's important for diabetics to track the HbA1c because if it is high, it means that the diabetes is not controlled. Okay. And in a normal person, it should be less than 6.5.
B is for blood pressure.
When we talk about controlling diabetes, it's actually interrelated with high blood pressure. If we look at diabetes patients who actually end up with renal problems and all that, in those cases, the blood pressure will also go up. A good blood pressure for diabetic would be 130/80 or below. Between 130/80 to 140/90 is a borderline range, and anything above 140/90 is clearly hypertensive.
Controlling the person's weight can also control the blood pressure, and 1 kilogram loss in weight will result in 1 millimeter drop in blood pressure. So that is also something good as a motivating factor in losing weight.
C is for cholesterol.
The main one that we look at first is actually the LDL, or the bad cholesterol. Usually for diabetics who have not suffered any major cardiovascular events like a stroke or heart attack, we would like to keep the LDL, or the bad cholesterol, below 2.6 millimoles per liter. If they have already suffered an event, that target would be even lower than that.
You must be thinking, but why do we need to hit these ABC targets? What do they really mean for your diabetic condition?
These 3 things are very important if we want to really manage and reduce the risk of cardiovascular events in a diabetic. There are many risk factors that are at play here. Some are controllable and some are not. Therefore, we need to focus a lot on the things that we can control.
And that's because the danger of diabetes lies in the complications that may arise.
We know that diabetes is called a silent killer for that reason. It is definitely possible for someone to go undiagnosed for a long time and then to suddenly present with something else, for example, a heart attack or a stroke, and then to find out that he or she has diabetes.
In fact, if you have diabetes, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke. So the stakes are high.
Especially since statistics show that 1 in 3 diabetics in Singapore are undiagnosed.
When we think of diabetes, some words immediately pop into our minds, like sugar, insulin, obesity. So I'm just curious, if diabetes had a face, what would it look like?
With obesity as a major contributor to type 2 diabetes, it's hard to imagine a normal weight or skinny person to be associated with the condition. As it turns out, how we look externally may not be an accurate representation of what's going on inside our bodies.
People who are slim can have diabetes, and there are actually 2 groups of such people. Those who have diabetes but not yet diagnosed, right? So obviously they will be thin. The second group is what I call burnt out diabetes. After a long duration, the pancreatic cells have all sort of died off. So that person will also be thin and diabetic. There is this group of people who are normal in weights, but what we call metabolically fat, meaning that they have a lifestyle that is sedentary and their diet that is poor.
Coming up, what's the deal with insulin? Is there a difference between insulin resistance and insulin deficiency? And can pets help to monitor blood glucose levels?
Having a dog to come and say, hey, do you want to go check? You saved my life.
Earlier, we highlighted the importance of tracking certain numbers if you're living with diabetes. These conditions are largely brought about due to problems with one particular hormone, insulin. So what exactly is the deal with insulin and why is it so important?
Insulin is actually a hormone. You can think of it like a key that actually unlocks the door and allows the sugar or the glucose to come out of the blood circulation and then go into the rest of the body where they are used to function, to produce energy and to keep our body working.
Diabetes occurs when insulin isn't exactly behaving the way that it should, meaning that glucose remains in the blood. But the insulin problem does differ from person to person.
Insulin works more or less the same unless a person has a high degree of what we call insulin resistance. You can think of it like a barrier. Even though there's enough insulin, there's something that's blocking it from entering into the cells. So things like visceral fat or even certain hormones, they act like a barrier. So what the body does is that it tries to make even more insulin to try and overcome this resistance. But if it can't make enough, and that's when the sugar goes up.
Because there are different reasons for why our insulin might not be behaving the way it should, the ways to treat diabetes can also be different.
For a person who's, let's say, a type 1 diabetic, where obviously the insulin is very low, oral medication is not going to work. Insulin therapy is the only way to go. Now, in a typical type 2, where there is still insulin being produced, then oral medication still has a role to play. Oral medication for diabetes, actually there are a couple of them. There's one group that actually depends on the presence of insulin. If a person has not enough insulin, these medicines aren't really going to work very well. There are a couple of others. They actually help to make the rest of the tissue more sensitive to insulin. So we call it insulin sensitizers. And there's another group that came out quite recently. It works in a very novel way. What it does is that it blocks a certain enzyme and causes the glucose to be excreted through the urine. Insulin injection basically goes to the root of the problem. It causes the blood sugar to actually come out of the bloodstream and to go into the cells where they're used.
Whether type 1 or type 2, the person who has diabetes need to control the diabetes well with medication and injection. But more than that, there is also a need to control the diet, have adequate exercise so that the diabetes complications can be minimized.
In many ways, diabetes is a balancing act. You're constantly trying to balance the amount of sugar and insulin in the body to achieve healthy levels of blood sugar. And it can be tough, but apparently there's somebody called Butter who can help. Hi!
Hi, Nikki. Hi.
Good to meet you, Butter.
That's Butter. Butter is my diabetic alert dog. I'm Stella.
Okay, sorry, that's a little embarrassing. But I'm confused because I'm supposed to be meeting someone named Butter who can tell me the secrets to monitoring blood glucose. But now the dog, okay, diabetic alert dog. That's amazing.
37-year-old Stella was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes about a year ago. One of the biggest challenges she faced was knowing when her blood sugars had dropped way too low. And that's when she realized that Butter, her dog for 12 years, had the potential to save her life.
You've had Butter for 12 years already. How is it that you can actually train Butter, a dog, to monitor your blood glucose levels?
When I found out that I had type 1 diabetes, I did a lot of research, and it was very shocking that I realized that a type 1 can go into a coma, a seizure, or even die with absolutely maybe even no symptoms. In other countries, they actually have this diabetic service dog that could actually tell their owners when their sugar is plunging. So I thought, okay, that is exactly what I'm going to do with my dog. I asked a lot of people, and some telling me that, by collecting your saliva sample when you are having a low, you could actually use that to reward the dog when they smell it. So during the training, she would be ambivalent to any saliva smell. As we progress, whenever I have a real hypo, I go to her and say, "Butter, smell this," and then here's a treat. One day, she just went like, "Oh, that's what you want me to look out for." And that day just happened, and from then on, I didn't have to give her a treat anymore. She just knew that when I smell that, I'm going to tell you.
Why did you choose to supplement your monitoring and finger pricking with training butter?
Finger pricking is not something we could do like 24 hours. Sometimes straight after you eat, even 1 hour after we eat, the sugar may plunge. And you wouldn't expect it. You wouldn't be pricking yourself during that time. So having a dog to come and say, hey, do you want to go check? Then you'll be like, oh, okay, thanks for the alert. Let me do it another time. And then you say, oh, yeah, you're right. It's low already.
Can you give me a specific example where butter saved your life or came in extremely handy at the right moment?
So there was one night I was going to a hypo. She came and then I was unaware. I was sleeping. So she came and she woke me up. So when I turned around and she just got a little bit worried that I'm sorry I woke you up. She reversed a little bit. I tested myself and I told her, Butter, well done. You saved my life. And then she started shaking her tail like, oh yeah, I did a good job.
Can butter help other people and sense whether they're having a hypo, or is it only for you?
I don't know the exact science of it. Some diabetic service dogs have been able to sense other people's low as well, but I just haven't had enough sample size to say for sure whether butter can do that for other people. But she has alerted one of the kids that visited my house.
After experiencing the wonders of having butter as her personal diabetes companion, Stella now trains other dogs to do the same.
Although diabetic alert dogs are rare locally, Stella hopes that Dogs and Diabetes Singapore would be able to help more diabetics in the near future.
We've heard it all before. Knowledge is power, and it could just be the key to your health. Educate yourself on the impact of nutrients like fat, protein, and cholesterol because they matter just as much as sugar does. And track your ABCs to keep those complications at bay. Diabetes doesn't have to take over your life because at the end of the day, remember, you are in control of your body.